Hey, Olivia, it's nice to meet you. How are you today?
Good. Hi, Nina. It's nice to meet you too. I'm good. Thank you for taking the time to interview me.
Yeah, thanks for joining us here at Ox in Spain. So let's just start out with where are you from?
Yeah, of course. So basically, I'm from Edinburgh in Scotland, and my degree was social anthropology and Spanish. So I thought it would be a cool opportunity to just kind of immerse myself within the culture and yeah, improve my Spanish, practice more. And it would be a nice kind of linear structure in terms of having done that with my degree, and then kind of yeah, like doing kind of integrated year abroad type of thing.
That's awesome. Ooh, social anthropology. I feel like that would have been my second area of study outside of education. It's so interesting. Cool, awesome. So where in Spain are you right now?
Yeah, so basically, I am in Valencia. So I applied for the region. I applied for the region of Valencia first, and then I think I applied for the Canary Islands, and then I applied for Andalusia in the south. But yeah, I'm really happy with the region I got, and I'm happy with Valencia. Yeah, which is basically about like 2, 3 hours from Barcelona and about 2 hours from Alicante on the coast. So it's a great city because you have the beach, you have kind of mountains and hills, and really great kind of hiking routes like further out. But also, you have like the City of Arts and Sciences designed by like Calatrava. So you have, yeah, an incredible kind of architectural scene, I guess, with kind of brutalist buildings at the university, the City of Arts and Sciences that is very dystopian looking, and then very typical kind of like I would say, I guess, like neoclassic um, kind of buildings in the old town. I guess like what you kind of imagine places like Spain, Italy to look like, in terms of these beautiful, very kind of detailed, orientated buildings. And then you have like Baroque. So there's a beautiful Baroque palace called the Marqués de Dos Aguas in Valencia. So I really like how, in terms of exploring the kind of architecture in the city, you can never get bored because there's really something for everybody.
Wow, that's awesome. I mean, I've only been to Valencia once, but I didn't have that much knowledge about the architecture. I do remember it being very beautiful, and calm. Like it felt like a calm city to me. I don't know.
Yeah, I what's nice about it is I'd imagine I've been to Barcelona 3 times, and as much as I really did like love the architecture and I stayed with a friend, I feel like here is a lot easier to kind of live in because like the buses maybe aren't as busy. It's kind of calmer in the sense that there is like less partying and less of that kind of scene, I'd say, than probably Barcelona or Madrid. But I think because like the transport's good and they're very kind of, I guess each area feels quite different, it doesn't feel too overwhelming because you can be in one area and kind of feel that you're in almost a different town. But because the population is much smaller, yeah, in terms of kind of like urbanization, it doesn't really rival like Madrid or Barcelona, say.
Mhm. Awesome. Oh, maybe I have to go back and revisit. See it
Yeah,
again. Yeah. So share a little bit about learning Valencian because you had told me that you're learning Valencian. So what's that experience like and well, why did you decide? And I guess like another question would be is it very common to hear Valencian there?
yeah. So it's really interesting because my first really I would say so basically Valencian here is a dialect of Catalan, but you can't really. Some people get offended if you call it Catalan, because it's basically very associated with Barcelona and the kind of independence movement of the state of Catalonia wanting to be independent. So here people will call like Valenciano, although it technically, linguistically speaking, is a dialect of Catalan. So in the classes, if we're doing translation work, we would look up Catalan to Spanish or Catalan to Castilian Spanish or Catalan to English. Um, but it's interesting because it's I guess a very big European kind of cosmopolitan globalized city with a lot of different foreigners and a lot of Americans, a lot of British people, and a lot of Ukrainians. I would say that most people speak Castilian Spanish here, and you really tend to hear Castilian Spanish. Maybe sometimes in schools you might hear some teachers speaking Valencian, but it's much more common to hear that in smaller towns outside of Valencia, um, where I guess there's more of a sense to continue on that kind of linguistic heritage. Um, yeah, so I'd say that I didn't realize before going here there was that political dimension to the language, linguistically speaking. So as an example, you can say like if you're saying thank you, you say gracias. But obviously if you're in Barcelona, you say merci. So if you use merci, a lot of people here will get offended or find it quite uncomfortable. So it's the same if you're saying like si os plau, like thank you, but you would only really use that in Barcelona or that region because yet again here people associate it with this movement of wanting kind of independence and I guess like like economic, political independence from the rest of Spain. Yeah, so I remember saying that to one of the teachers one time we were walking on the road and he looked at me like you like no, like that's not what you say here. So obviously now I say gracias. From that moment on, I was like, okay, it's gracias. Yes, I say it's an interesting language to learn. Obviously, in school, at least I feel like within the UK, the main languages you learn would be, in terms of foreign languages, would be French and German and Spanish. We don't really tend to overly prioritize regional languages. So I chose to study it because I basically felt that this would be a great linguistic opportunity because I know that it's not a language that I can necessarily learn physically really outside of, say, Barcelona, potentially Alicante a little bit, and Valencia. Yeah. I mean, some schools now in the UK are doing Chinese as the kind of next language of the future, but I just felt that I didn't want to be here and not learn it because it would be really liking languages. I felt like it'd be a missed opportunity. Yeah. Um, but I think it's really interesting as a language because basically a lot of the words are written how French is written. So, and I speak French. So it's funny some of the time because it's kind of like teaching myself to completely re-speak French, but phonetically. So as an example, in French, if you're saying like physically, like physiquement, but obviously Valencian is like physiquement. So it's literally taking a lot of words, yeah, and pronouncing them phonetically versus non-phonetically. So basically, a lot of people say it's closest to French, and not in terms of the pronounce. I mean, kind of in terms of the pronunciation in some ways, but it's closer to French than say Castilian Spanish. So the biggest example would be that you have apostrophes in Catalan, which you don't in Castilian Spanish. So I think as a kind of at least everybody in my class are native Spanish speakers, Castilian, mainly from Madrid, or like Andalusia, and that's the bit I think they find the most difficult, knowing when to kind of like apostrophize different words, and therefore how you should kind of pronounce them in terms of the kind of run on of the pronunciation. Yeah, so there are some words also that maybe sound a little bit like French. So if you're saying like information in French, like information, and it's a similar kind of sound, so it would be like information, like kite, like information, but like information. So it's kind of a similar sound. It's just almost kind of cut off, I guess. So yeah, and then you have words kind of like positiu, which are also, I guess, influenced by the French too. Yeah, but I think it's a pretty language. I like how it sounds. I think actually having learned Valencian or learning Valencian, my Spanish is a lot better in terms of my pronunciation. Probably not the grammar, but I think that because it's pronounced like Castilian Spanish is pronounced, I have a stronger, I would say, kind of accent in Spanish now than I did before moving here, or at least I'm a lot more familiar with the kind of intonations and rhythms and sounds of the language. Yeah, as opposed to potentially a more kind of standardized general kind of sounding, like pronouncing the words well, but not exactly really sounding overly Spanish or really from a certain part of Spain. Yeah.
I mean, that's awesome. I had no idea. I mean, I know there are like different dialects within Spain, but I think that's one of my favorite things about Spain is that it's so small, but there's so much diversity and so, in so many different ways, like not just linguistically, like you just shared, but also like even in terms of food also, like each region has their own special dish, right? That they're very proud of, because they're the originals. And yeah, Spain in general just has such a fascinating history as well, because there were so many different cultures that were like in and out of this, part of the world. So yeah, that's really cool. I think it's really interesting that you're learning the language, because I mean, I don't personally know many people who would want to do it. So I think that's really awesome that you're taking that extra step to really like understand the culture, of the region that you're in. So that's, yeah, cool. Do you have any travel recommendations or anything like that for Valencia for people?
Yeah, no, I was gonna say yeah. Thank you for saying that. That's really I appreciate that, Nina. Thank you. Yeah, because I was gonna say too, there like one of my friends, Joe, who's an assistant, he's learning Spanish, so he'll see. So as an example, billboards, posters. There's a lot of street art in the El Carmen area of Valencia, that kind of barrio, and a lot of the street art there'll be like slogans and kind of taglines written in Valencian. So he was actually telling me the other day that as much as he can maybe work out what it means, learning or being in the process of learning Castilian Spanish, he doesn't know how to read it or write it or pronounce it. So I really do like the fact that I can be sitting in a bus, like traveling to like work or yeah, and I'll see a sign in Valencian, and as well as understanding it, I can actually read it, and I would say read it pretty confidently or yeah, I know that I can use that language, I can read it, and it's great just having that another language kind of tied to my belt. Because when I first went into the class, I did my first lesson. A1 was completely booked out. So the teacher was like, okay, you can do A2. So the whole class is completely conducted in Valencian. So honestly, for the first couple of weeks, I got maybe like 50% of what was going on. But now I can get about like 80%. So it's funny because as much as I went into the class, I didn't expect to actually, especially when she talked slowly about topics I guess that I understood or were similar to the topics I studied learning Spanish at high school. I was really pleased by how much I understood. Like I didn't really realize that learning, say, Castilian Spanish or even French or Italian would unnecessarily lock Catalan, would unlock that language. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, I don't know if I would learn a dialect of one of the regions here in Spain. I think I mean I learned Spanish here, primarily because I've been here for several years now. But I think, like what you're doing in terms of learning it while you're living here is critical too. Because I know like a lot of Auxes maybe come over without speaking Spanish. But like that's the fastest way to learn, is to just like really immerse yourself in it. So like the fact that you walked into this class and they only spoke in Valencian, like, oh my gosh, I can't imagine how challenging it might have been in the beginning. But like I think that's the best way to acquire the language, right? Is to just like be 100% immersed in it. So yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, definitely. Because I think you can do it on Duolingo, but I think that to do it on Duolingo, it says you actually need I think B1 or B2 Castilian Spanish. Yeah. So as much as there's a language say that's I would say digitally more accessible than something say like Quechua or a specific dialect Creole. Aside from really Duolingo and maybe some other apps I'm not familiar with, I would still say that I'm not sure how much information there is kind of online, how many kind of books you can work from. Yeah, a lot of the kind of novels that are in Valencian or Catalan technically really I've only really seen here. I've not seen in other parts of Spain whatsoever when I was younger on family holidays. Um yeah, so it's interesting that it does occupy this kind of digital playing field, but I wouldn't say that that is as grand as, say, potentially maybe other minority languages that are seen as being more important to learn. So as much as very few people learn Cantonese because it's exceptionally difficult. Um, language of Hong Kong, I do think there's probably more online resources for learners than, say, potentially languages like Catalan or certain dialects of Creole or even Hawaiian. Duolingo does Hawaiian too, but yet again, aside from the app, there aren't really books, or at least I don't think there's a lot of online resources for learners. Which is why I thought to, it'd be great to actually do the class in person and go to it and not just kind of learn it on Duolingo.
Awesome. So let's talk more about Valencia. Um, you said you had visited a couple of towns in the region. Do you have any recommendations for people?
Yeah, of course. So Chativa, which is about an hour away, is very pretty and beautiful castle. And yeah, I really it with like amazing views. So I quite like that. And then also you can go to Sagunto as well with like Renfi, and that's also maybe an hour and a half. You can the opposite direction, and it's really beautiful. It also has a very, very famous castle. Yeah, so there are a lot of towns for them if you're interested in kind of the medieval period or kind of castles or fortresses that have these beautiful kind of fortresses on the hill on the hills that I would recommend. Yeah, and currently right now in Valencia, we're in the process of celebrating the Fallas or Fallas in Valencian. Yeah, that is this regional holiday before kind of Semana Santa to mark transitioning from the winter into the spring. So if you're in Valencia this time, you can go visit this exhibition called the Moonot Exhibition, which features hundreds of different sculptures made by essentially local kind of social committees. Yeah, and that's a really special time in Valencia for a lot of the people who are from here and live here. And you can actually go and you can vote for your favorite sculpture. So to get selected to go to the Farias Museum, that's a permanent museum here in Valencia, and the rest get burned. Yeah, called El Querido at the very yeah at the kind of end of March.
I remember, I feel like I vaguely remember reading about this holiday at some point, specifically like around the birding. That's actually really cool. So have you seen that yet, or is it's in the process of happening right now?
So basically, it started yesterday. Because of the really big fire in Campanada, it was meant to start last weekend, but they pushed back. Yeah, the celebrations to this week. So last night there were fireworks at the Serrano Towers. Yeah, and the Faya Mayor, I think, gave a speech to kind of celebrate the incoming. So it started officially yesterday. Yeah.
Really cool. Awesome. And then I just have one more question for you, and that is, what is your favorite thing about being here in Spain?
Oh, that's a hard one. I mean, there are lots of things, yeah, that I really enjoy about it. I think that probably the best thing, which sounds kind of surprising, is that if you're under, I think it's 31, maybe 35, but if you're under a certain age, you get a free bus pass in Valencia, and I think that they also have that for the I think they have that also for the Canary Islands and I think the Balearic Islands. I'm not sure about other big kind of urbanized cities or spaces in Spain, but with the free bus pass, it means that I can go to any parts of the city. I can get buses to kind of the kind of outer suburbs like Torrens and Paterna. So I think that that's my favorite aspect of the city because it's really easy to kind of get around the city. I think that the transport with the metro, the bus system, the tram is really efficient and really easy and runs very well. But I think for me, yeah, my favorite thing about being here would be this kind of mix of different architectural styles. So, as an example, there's this beautiful house called La Casa Judita, basically right behind the mill ring, and it's got like Hindu, Egyptian, kind of Byzantine architectural influences. So I would just say, because I really like art and design and fashion and architecture, as a very like visual person, I really enjoy seeing all these different examples of of architecture and that kind of I guess material culture and heritage that the city has to offer. yeah, so if you're here for a day, off the top of my head, I would definitely recommend the Silk Exchange, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. I recommend the Central Market because it has a really beautiful and iconic dome. I'd recommend, of course, the City of Arts and Sciences because it's one of the 12 jewels of Spain. I would recommend La Casa Judita, which is one of my favorites. I'd recommend the train station because I think it's an example of Valencian Art Deco, which is a unique kind of style that we have here. I think they have a similar kind of version in Barcelona, more like Catalan Art Deco as opposed to like Valencian per se. Yeah, so I think those would be my top recommendations. But I think as a city, it has the Turia kind of, which is a garden right throughout the city. So if you're interested in nature, you can go there, and you have places like the Palace of Culture. There, it's kind of in the middle of the gardens. But also, if you're wanting a more kind of urban space, maybe more kind of gentrified, with kind of restaurants and coffee shops, sort of Safa is really great for that. And my favorite area is El Carmen because it has lots of incredible, very eclectic street art. Um, yeah, so probably finally my favorite piece or my favorite street artist is there are all these little ninjas spread throughout the city by David Limon, and that is really unique to Valencia. So whenever I'm in a different kind of part of town, I try to spot them. And right now I have 32 of them on my phone, but apparently there are like 200. So clearly I need to be looking at, somewhat more in depth, but in depth. But yeah, he's a Valencian street artist, and although they're ninjas, they're meant to, or they look like ninjas, they're meant to basically represent the street artist himself. So they have this circle inside of them with love hearts, which is meant to highlight the kind of mood the street artist is in whilst painting or whilst creating these pieces. Yeah. So I also like Dyslexia, who's Chilean, so you've got a lot of like Aztec mythological kind of creatures in his street art. Um, yeah, you have like Julieta X that does very kind of cutesy, narrative based pieces. Yeah.
Wow, I feel like you should be a spokesperson of Valencia. You've sold me. I'm like, all right, I gotta go book my trip to Valencia now.
So let me know if you're here.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was
definitely. Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Olivia. And yeah, enjoy your time in Valencia.
thank you. Thank you for interviewing me. It was great to chat.
Same. Bye.
Bye.